Good afternoon, this is Jeff of Sewer Tech Northwest. Today we're at 5420 Southwest Murray Boulevard here in Beaverton. We're at the front of the home here, kind of at the front left corner of the house. We have a 4-inch cast iron cleanout as our point of access. I'm going to insert the camera and check the overall condition and serviceability of the sanitary sewer line. Currently have water running. Here we go. And I don't know if this line actually goes all the way out to Murray or not, or if it hits some type of easement, but we're going to keep the camera moving here fairly briskly just to figure that out here, because if it goes all the way out to Murray, we're probably going to have to do this, and as long as it has multiple cleanouts, it'll probably take 2 phases in order to at least to get the camera all the way out. Now we're going to look at this joint again on the way out. I think we might have a root strand. My camera is running right up along. It might also just be a line in the concrete. We'll take a look at everything real good on the way out. And we are in concrete pipe, and at this point here, it looks like that thing I thought was a root is just a ledge or a line in the concrete where the flow line stops at, as far as I can tell right now. I'm seeing it on both sides here very consistently. We've got hot water coming down the line right now. We'll make sure all that steams out of the pipe at a certain point. It looks like we might have a hole in the concrete pipe right here on the right side of the screen. Yeah, that looks like a hole there. Alright, and it does not go all the way out to Murray, thank goodness. Terminates here at 48 feet. So we're going to let the line drain out here for a few minutes. And this concrete material, it appears to be transite concrete, which is an asbestos concrete. It has asbestos fibers in it instead of aggregate rock. And I know there's that asbestos word there, but it holds up about 1,000,000 times better than regular concrete does. But it does appear we've got at the very least, we've got a hole in the concrete pipe wall. So we'll make sure we take a good look at that on the way out. I'm going to go locate just to verify where we're at here currently. Alright, located the camera head successfully at the main lateral right out front here in the little private drive, and it's on the closest. There's kind of 2 little roads here. One is for the exit out onto Murray, one is for entering off of Murray into this little street here, and it's the one where you make an entrance into the lot, or the road that's closest to us here. So we're going to let it drain out completely here before pulling back in. Alright, we are down to just barely a trickle at this point here. It's nothing that's going to affect our view of anything. We're going to go ahead and reel back in. That same dark line there is still running down the pipe, and you can see now the water's drained out. It's just a little edge there that's created where the flow line kind of stops at. So this spot right here, we do have a hole in the pipe itself. What I don't know, and I believe that these transite concrete joints, generally a lot of the time anyway, you can see rubber showing through. I believe they are a fern coat joint, though it could actually still be completely sealed off from the ground here currently. But it's really hard to tell, unfortunately, without turning and looking inside that, which we cannot do, unfortunately. So anyway, it makes kind of a tough call. I'm going to recommend it be repaired because there's a hole there. Unfortunately, I can't see anything past that. And given how high it is up off the flow line, it's unlikely this is letting a lot of water escape. It's probably letting a few drops if it is indeed open to the ground, which again, we don't know. Not without looking inside there, but there's a decent hole there in the pipe. So if there's not a rubber fern coat behind that, then it would be open to the ground. At this point, it's in existence, though. I would think with a hole there, we would have dirt flowing into the pipe from the outside, which is very common to have when you have a compromised joint. We don't have any of that here. It's quite clean. So anyway, I'm going to get this marked. I do recommend a spot repair there. It's more than anything in this circumstance. Generally, if you have a hole in the side of the pipe, almost 100% of the time you're going to be opened up to the ground, whether you have dirt in it or not. But because these joints, I believe, are fern coated with a rubber sleeve around them, this could actually be sealed off from the ground. So keep that in mind when deciding whether or not to do a repair on it. I've got a white X down on the ground here. It is right where the front yard area meets the little private drive. My X is half on dirt, half on asphalt there. We're at 5 feet 2 inches deep. Now, if you do a repair on that, I would recommend looking into the cost difference. I would get some bids first. When the repair sits that close to the edge of a street, sometimes you can actually tunnel underneath it without having to cut the asphalt or concrete and repair it. That's where a lot of the expense goes when you have a situation like that. We have another, looks like opening or hole right here. But this is what I'm talking about though. We have a hole in the pipe, but if you look into there, there's a wall behind it. That looks like the rubber fern coat. So that's what I mean is you might not actually have open pipe up to the ground here if you have a fern coat behind those spots. So it makes it really difficult. I mean, for liability reasons, I have to recommend a repair be done here because the pipe is damaged and potentially could be allowing water to escape. But unless you're doing soil samples, there's really no way to confirm that. But anyway, this is what I was talking about at the other hole. Is if you have a fern coat behind it, you could still have a pipe that's sealed off from the ground. It's just I'm not able to do that, so I have to recommend a repair on it. Well, here at 36 feet, we have another hole in the pipe. I'll get this marked with the white X. But because there's multiple of them, I would recommend looking into a pipe liner for the repair. See what the cost difference is between trenching and a pipe liner. The liner would be a good idea in this circumstance because the pipe we have here drains nicely, and you're just going to retain the exact slope and grade of what's here, and it may save some money in repair costs. That, you know, if you have to dig it up, sometimes digging that hole ends up costing a bit more than doing a pipe liner. All right, and this spot here is about 6 inches past the little fence here in the front yard, on the street side of the fence. We're around 4 feet deep there. It's a kind of a tough spot to get an accurate locate, but it does. I'm getting about 4 feet deep there. But that one there, given the fact that we cannot see any dirt and it looks like we've got black rubber behind it, I'm fairly certain that those joints we're looking at there are sealed off from the ground. Otherwise, you'll get dirt flowing into the pipe. This joint right here is about ready to do the same thing if you look on the right side of the screen. And I can't tell if that's dirt that's slowly starting to come through there or not. It's really hard to tell, especially when it hasn't opened up yet. But that one there is doing a very similar thing, as is this joint. That looks like many of these pipe joints here are wearing out right at the joint. At some point, once that goes far enough, it will likely get opened up to the ground. But you can see right here, this is a good example. You can see the rubber right between that joint. So that's what's surrounding the outside of the pipe there. And it does overlap a fair amount. So you can have a joint that's kind of busted up and a little separated there without being open to the ground. Generally, if a pipe is truly open to the ground, you'll get some level of dirt that's flowing into it. Now this one has a whole bunch of earthworms sitting in right. If you look into that spot there, very similar thing here. That joint's starting to show some wear. If you look in amongst that dirt, though, you'll see a whole bunch of earthworms, which those things are coming from the ground outside of the pipe. So to a certain extent, the joints are opened up to the ground. The line here is still functioning quite nicely. I highly doubt that there's very much in the way of sewage escaping through those spots there because they're all very small, and most of them look like they have rubber on the other side. So if any water is escaping, it's a very small amount. But because of the fact that we've got damage at each one of those joints, I'm inclined to recommend a liner or replacement of this concrete section. That does not mean it's not still working and doing its job. It's just when there's damage at every joint like that, and I cannot confirm whether or not they are truly open to the ground. That joint there I can tell, but I mean, you got earthworms can squeeze through a space that's like a 32nd of an inch or smaller wide. So that doesn't mean it's just a gaping hole, but they do appear to be somewhat or partially open to the ground. So for that reason, I've got to recommend a pipe liner be done. So if a repair is not done, which I would not be surprised if it doesn't happen, considering how nicely everything's flowing through there, I would keep an eye on the line. I might do rescopes every 3 to 5 years to keep an eye on the concrete condition, because once that pipe starts to wear and go, it can start falling apart on you. So I just don't want to see anything like that happen. So keep that in mind if you're going to try and live with what we've got here. But at this time, we've got busted up joints about every single spot that there's a concrete pipe joint, but we still have very good flow to the main lateral. We have no standing water issues, anything like that. It still functions quite well. But about every 10 feet here we have a joint. That's very indicative of transite. You'll have joints every 10 feet. So basically here at 10 feet, We should have another one here at about 20, 22 feet, something like that. Yeah, right here. Every single one of these joints we can see now has got wearing happening at it. So anyhow, if you do a full repair on this one, given the length of that section of concrete there, I would definitely look into doing a pipe liner on it. I'm going to put a small paint marking right here at the cast iron transition in the event the repair happens, and you go from right. The cast iron transition is often where you want to start the repair. The cast iron pipe is still in good shape. So I'll put a white T marking here. All right, we're going to go ahead and reel the camera out of the line. I have a white T marking here in the front yard. We're only about 1 foot 7 inches deep there. It's not a terribly deep line across the whole section, but once you start getting out into the roadway, that's where digging becomes much more expensive. Through the yard here, at only a foot, 2 feet deep, that's not terribly expensive to dig up, but a portion of it is underneath the asphalt. So because of that, I would recommend doing a pipe liner as the first and foremost repair option. You can do whatever you want, but I think this would be a good candidate for that. You wouldn't have to dig a single hole, just stuff the liner through the clean out and get it lined and call it good. I do recommend they update from 10 feet there at the cast iron transition out to the main lateral connection at 48 feet. But at this time, I also have to tell you that the line is functioning. It's not functioning necessarily properly because it could be allowing some water to escape the pipe, but for the most part, it looks like about 95 to 99% of whatever's going down the line is making it all the way to the main lateral connection there. Now the other thing you have to think about too is those joints wear. There are 3 or 4 trees here in the front yard. A couple of them are sitting on either side of the sewer pipe. If those joints get much more compromised, you could end up with roots coming through the sewer pipe. So keep that in mind too. Make sure it gets re-scoped every 3 to 5 years at minimum to keep an eye on things if you don't do a repair right now.